Welcome back to Vintage Camera Digest. Today, I just want to address probably the most important question a photographer might face concerning shooting with film. What is the point? So yeah, what's the point of shooting film in a digital age? Why do we do it? Why do so many of us insist on participating in this craft using the most expensive methods possible? It really doesn't seem to make any logical sense. I mean, digital photography is technically superior to film photography, and I think I can say that without any reservation. And if you are of the age where you may have started out as a film photographer who transitioned to digital around the turn of the century, you know I'm right. Digital cameras are incredible tools that allow us to shoot in situations that would have been simply impossible in the film days. With digital, we have flexibility in ISO, color balance that we can change from shot to shot. And concerning ISO, modern cameras are no less than miraculous when it comes to controlling noise and grain. And if you don't want to look at it from a technical perspective, it certainly doesn't make any economic sense whatsoever. Let's crunch some numbers. I went to the B&H website and priced a few 36 exposure rolls of 35mm film. Take Kodak Pro Image 100. Each shot is going to cost you 24 cents. Kodak Ektar 100, 42 cents. Kodak Portra 800, right at 50 cents per shot. Kodak Tri-X, 33 cents. Ilford Delta 400, 36 cents. Fuji Velvia 50, 81 cents per shot. And then if you want to look at medium format, it just gets worse. Portra 400 will run you anywhere from 83 cents to $1.55, depending on whether you're shooting 645 or 6x9 format. T-Max 400 will be anywhere from 59 cents to $1.10. And if that's not crazy enough, just look at large format film prices. 4x5 will run you around $3 per shot, and 8x10 is going to be about $8 per shot. Now, while I was there, I also looked at prices of SD cards. You can get a middle-of-the-road 64GB card for around 20 bucks. With a 32 megapixel camera, you'll get about 1,800 shots on that card, costing you a whopping 1 cent per exposure you decide not to delete. And then if you factor in that you can reuse that card for years, well, the cost becomes almost negligible. Economically, it's a no-brainer. Yet, here we are, and here I am on a YouTube channel devoted to film photography and film cameras. And though I can't speak for why you're here, I do sort of know why I am. I was fortunate enough to find a career in photography. 10 of those years were spent working with film in a darkroom. The last 20 years were completely digital, and man, I was all in on the digital. Like I said earlier, it allowed me to shoot in places and situations I'd never have been able to with film, or at least without tons of expensive lighting gear, and it allowed me to do my job pretty well. But doing a thing for 30 years as a job has a peculiar way of taking the joy out of that thing. I was desensitized to the wonder that I experienced the first time I picked up a camera. I had very little interest in photography outside of my job. I seldom took a camera on a trip or anywhere, really. My wife took most of the photos on a little point-and-shoot digital camera. I was the photographer who didn't really like photography anymore. Now, that sense of wonder I just mentioned was very real at one time. When I was a kid, my dad was always in charge of the photos and the camera. It seemed like an important task for an adult. But when I was about 10, I got my own camera. This one. A cheap 110 format camera from Kmart, and it even has my name on the bottom with that old school label maker. And I remember the first roll of film I shot with it. My 4th grade class took a field trip to the zoo, and I remember the very first photo I made was of a white deer. It was empowering for me to be able to choose what I thought was worth documenting and committing to film. And in doing that, I subconsciously assigned a value to that subject, to that deer. And I think, for me at least, that value, or the creation of value, is the reason I gravitated back to shooting film. There's a real cost associated with creating it. But with digital, I can shoot all day, and it really doesn't cost me anything besides my time. But with film, I've deemed the subject valuable enough to use this expensive method to record it. You know, if we look through the lens of current film prices and the costs associated with film, we have to realize in some sense that any subject we capture, we've deemed it valuable enough to use this expensive method to record it. Or It may be that we haven't thought about that at all, but still, we've committed something to film, and there are tangible out-of-pocket costs involved. So whether consciously or subconsciously, we're declaring this subject, whatever it is of sufficient value to document in such a way. And that's important, and I think that's what photography has excelled at doing over the last 150 years. It's allowed us to document our lives, our stories, our histories, and to assign value to those things that we hold dear. And if we're truly concerned with safeguarding that documentation, what's a better method to use than film? Film, and prints for that matter, at least have some degree of permanence and stability, and can remain accessible for at least a century. As for digital photographs, I have tens of thousands of images on my computer and external drives that are hanging by the thread of a power surge. Of course, I can back those up, but then that backup is hanging from that same thread. Film isn't bulletproof, but it'll take something a lot more uncommon than a failed hard drive to lose them forever. Take these photos I just found at an antique shop. And this one in particular. When was the last time you thought a photo was worthy of such packaging? You know, I have no idea who this individual is, but the very existence of this print proves that she was an important part of someone's story. But also consider this. How did such a beautiful photo made by the fine folks at the Skinner Studio in Grand Forks, North Dakota, end up in an antique shop in Bremen, Georgia? I'm assuming that whoever used to cherish and treasure this photo has long since passed. And I guess that in that sense, it has little inherent value at all. That it's just a temporary value at best, and once those who assign that value are gone, it reverts to a meaningless piece of paper containing only a pattern of silver salts. But not only have I returned to film to add value back into my photography, but sort of others' photography as well. I went through a stage of buying random boxes of old negatives and the plates. Brilliant. I guess I was hoping to resurrect some of the value of these photos, because by my accounting, all these had been reduced to only the monetary value that someone was willing to pay on eBay. You know, I'm certainly aware of the most likely undignified chain of events that led them to be in my possession, and not that of the families to whom these souls belonged. Maybe those families are all gone. I don't know. But these photos held specific value to someone else at some time before. There are real stories here, and it's fun to think about what those stories might be. Let's take a look. You know, I've been told many times that I'm overly sentimental, assigning unnecessary value to things that I associate with my family. But with all of these images, maybe I'm taking on others as well. Well, we can debate whether or not this is emotionally healthy, but where will all our digital photos be in 100 years? In the cloud? Or irretrievable on crashed hard drives in the landfill? At least with film, you've got something to touch, to pass down. I don't know what will happen to any of my negatives after I'm gone, but I don't foresee a day when my JPEGs are going to end up on eBay. So, why do I shoot film? Because photography is worth it. It adds tangible value back into this form of communication that I've enjoyed all my life. But what are your reasons for shooting film? Is it to add value or something else? I'd especially like to hear from any of you that grew up in the digital age and never shot with film prior to that. What does film offer you that digital doesn't? What brings you to film now? Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Be sure to hit the like button if so, and consider subscribing. I've still got a lot of cameras to go over, as well as some new film comparisons to be coming up before too long. Also coming up, we'll be featuring the Konica Auto Reflex T3. As part of the class of 1959, we'll have the Asahi Pentax H2. And we'll be taking a look at this gem, the Yashica Mat 124G. And in true Yashica form, we'll also take a look at the wide angle and telephoto auxiliary lenses for that. Now, I'll be traveling next week, so no new episode then, but we'll be back in full swing the week after that. In the meantime, whether you're celebrating holidays in the next couple of weeks or not, be sure to spend some time with family and friends and create some value. See you next time.